In the dark of night, the man arrived at the predetermined location to complete the diamond transaction, on which was written the coordinates of another crime syndicate. The man quickly sent the coordinates to the command center.
Initializing thermostat scan.
And immediately, the U.S. Air Force launched a precision missile attack on the target. The man should have just completed this task
To business.
and then dealt with the boss in front of him. But unexpectedly, the incident happened at this time.
Shit. Why is it beating on the diamonds?
They are uncut diamonds.
These are stolen.
Uh-oh.
Who are you really? CIA?
The man was lighting a cigar, then he took a long, enjoyable drag, and then he casually threw it into the trash can behind him. The fire broke out from the cigarette butt that had caught on to the gasoline. Although he was the one who started the fire, the man not only didn't care at all, but he also calmly drove his supercar away from the scene. In the car, he called the fire department to report the situation. Then, the man used tactful words to ask about their travel route. After he confirmed that all the information was correct, the man immediately drove into the small alley next to the target. Then he took out the firefighting suit that he had prepared in advance and changed. When everything was ready, he immediately clung to the approaching fire truck. Just like that, the man had infiltrated the heavily guarded diamond area of End Group. Not only that, he also whistled to greet the guard behind him. He was Luke, an American CIA. Waiting until the fire truck passed the next corner, Luke jumped out of the car and landed right next to a manhole cover. Then Luke used the tools he brought with him to pry open the manhole cover, and he quickly crawled straight into the sewer, filled with smoke and dust. Then he calmly walked to the mission location. Luke used a high-tech laser flashlight to open a path for himself, and this was the goal of his trip. In front of Luke was a small, heavily guarded vault.
Ready.
And then a loud explosion rang out, and a lot of dollars flew all over the floor. But Luke didn't care about that at all. Then he took out a small, unsightly box, because the diamonds stored inside the box were the real valuables. He thought that Luke would sell this to make a large sum of money, but unexpectedly, he wanted to trade these diamonds with Polonia. Facing Polonia's question, Luke frankly admitted that he was a CIA agent. This small pill was poisoned to die after the mission failed.
This will be fun.
But the strange thing was that after Luke took the pill with wine, the two sat looking at each other for nearly half an hour, but they did not see the poison take effect. In response to Polonia's question,
I might have taken the antidote.
Luke completed this final task. Before leaving, he did not forget to take the diamonds on the table. That the next day when he returned home to celebrate, Luke's family thought that he was just an ordinary fitness equipment salesman. Today, he finally got to meet his youngest daughter, Emma. She was the person he was always proud of. But strangely, there were several wounds on her arm.
I messed it up roller skating.
Luke didn't pay much attention at first, but when Luke went to the CIA to complete the retirement procedures a week later, his longtime colleague Barry informed him that his superiors had just assigned him a new mission. A CIA agent codenamed Panda was undercover in a terrorist base in Guyana. According to intelligence, Panda's identity would most likely be exposed next week, so his superiors wanted Luke to carry out his last mission before retiring. He had to help Panda get the terrorist's nuclear suitcase, and then the two of them would return home together. The terrorist leader in the photo was Boro. His father was killed by Luke 25 years ago. Although Boro had grown up and followed his father's footsteps, he didn't know about this. He even considered Luke his benefactor. So as soon as Boro and Luke met, Boro enthusiastically took him on a tour of his base. But at this moment, Luke was extremely frightened when he saw the fighting ring in the distance, because on the ring, there was a very strong girl. It was Luke's good daughter, Emma. Luke saw his daughter fighting in the ring. She used powerful attacks that made her opponent unable to fight back. This was completely contrary to what he knew about Emma. Luke felt extremely disappointed. After the intense and dramatic match, Boro immediately introduced Luke and Emma to each other. They only needed to look at each other to immediately understand each other's identities. but on the surface, they still pretended to have met for the first time. But when everyone around had left, Luke and his daughter could not control their emotions. Luke angrily called Barry. It was obvious that Barry had known about this before. He had no choice but to accept Luke's video call. He asked why Emma worked for the CIA. Barry quickly explained. Perhaps Emma had inherited Luke's top agent genes, so the CIA had used tricks to trick her into becoming an agent a few years ago. And in order to ensure that Luke and Emma would not be distracted, the CIA had deliberately arranged for the two to operate in different areas. They even forced those who knew the story to sign confidentiality agreements. Now the CIA just needs them to get the terrorists' nuclear suitcase, and everything after that can be negotiated with their superiors. In the evening, Luke was invited to a party at the terrorist base, and at this time he suddenly saw that Boro seemed a bit strange. He went on stage to show his respect to Luke. Then he called a close subordinate up. Everyone thought that Boro intended to reward this subordinate, but unexpectedly, he asked where the money was from the last weapons transaction. The subordinate immediately said he didn't know. Boro didn't believe it, and immediately pulled out a gun and shot him dead in front of everyone. Perhaps Boro did this to warn Luke. If he cooperated with him, he would get money, but if Luke wanted to play tricks, he would end up like that subordinate. After the others cleaned up the corpses, Boro immediately went to Luke, who was sitting there in a daze. He said that his father once told him about Luke creating a killing technique, a technique of cutting the target's throat vertically, causing the opponent to bleed out extremely quickly and die. Boro said he had never witnessed this killing technique, and he hoped to see it with his own eyes one day. After talking to Boro, Luke turned around and bumped into an old man. Although it was a bit confusing, Luke still took advantage of the time when no one was around to see it. He then used the excuse of wanting to jump to find Emma. It turned out that the old man was willing to pay a large sum of money for Luke to take his whole family away from here. Emma, of course, did not agree, but the father and son did not argue much, because at the moment they had more important tasks to do. Late at night, two of Boro's subordinates were on their way to a nearby rice field to pick up goods, when they suddenly saw a dead cow lying across the road. They thought that some villager had accidentally hit the cow and killed it, so the two of them planned to carry it out to continue on their way. But then someone suddenly attacked them. It turned out to be Emma. What Luke didn't expect was that his daughter was so strong. She was willing to crawl into the cow's body just to disguise herself. Although Luke was helpless, he couldn't persuade his daughter. The father and daughter had no choice but to stuff the cow's body into the trunk of the car, and then they moved to the rice field to find the recipient. Because the CIA had informed Luke that the recipient knew Emma's true identity, they had to quickly find a way to deal with him. But unexpectedly, the father and daughter were still arguing about trivial matters. Luke blamed Emma for having a useless boyfriend, and Emma told him about Luke's betrayal by his wife. The two argued heatedly, but they didn't notice that they had hit and killed the recipient. The next morning, Emma was confident that she would solve everything. Then she took out her notebook and began to discuss with Luke about the plan to steal the nuclear suitcase, because weapons were not allowed. In the base, Emma took out two guns she had bought on the black market. She held an automatic rifle, and Luke was given a small pink pistol by her daughter. It was obvious that Luke was at a disadvantage, but just as the father and son were discussing, Boro's scolding suddenly came from outside the door. After all, the disappearance of the consignee last night was not a small matter. Boro's subordinate immediately suspected Luke and Emma. Luke was about to explain, but at that moment, a scream suddenly rang. Out from the riverbank, Boro and his subordinate hurriedly ran out to sea. On the river surface appeared the corpses of the two subordinates who had received the consignment last night, and Boro also discovered a vertical cut on the neck of one of them. Boro was extremely angry. He immediately summoned all his subordinates to blockade the entire base to hunt down Luke, but he did not expect that Emma had taken him to the place where the nuclear suitcase was hidden. The old man who gave them the note last night also followed them. Emma was about to punch the old man, thinking he was from Boro, but Luke stopped her daughter. Luke thought that if the old man was Boro's man, he would have shot them. At this time, the old man also spoke up to confirm that he was not Boro's man. Luke saw that Boro's men were about to arrive, so he immediately thought of a plan. He sent the coordinates of the nuclear suitcase to Barry, and Luke asked him to use hacking techniques to create an alarm sound that was about to explode. Boro's subordinates heard it and ran away in fear, so Luke easily got the nuclear suitcase. Then his group drove the jeep back to the meeting point with the helicopter. However, the loud noise still made Boro's men discover them. While Emma was driving, she was unfortunately shot in the left arm. Luke saw this and immediately pulled out his pink pistol to shoot back, but the car was going too fast for him to aim, so Luke jumped into the enemy's car and took them down. Then the group sped away. They finally arrived at the meeting point, but just before the helicopter arrived, Boro brought a group of his subordinates here. Knowing that the situation was dire, Luke had no choice but to surrender. Boro trusted Luke very much, but he didn't expect him to betray him like this.
Who are you?
When he saw that Luke didn't answer, Boro went crazy and grabbed Emma. Boro used the little girl's life to force Luke to tell the truth, but he didn't expect that not only did he not submit, he also told Boro the truth about his father's death. Luke said that Boro's father was hung on a cliff by his collar. He cried like a child and begged him to spare his life. He was so scared that he even peed his pants. Boro lost control when he heard that and threatened to shoot the girl to death immediately. Boro asked why Luke told him the truth, and he pointed behind him and said that he was stalling for time. He saw a CIA helicopter suddenly appear in the sky, and the powerful firepower from above caused chaos among the terrorists below. Luke and Emma took the opportunity to pick up weapons on the ground, and they quickly found a hiding place to eliminate all immediate threats. Although they eventually let Boro escape, at least they had accomplished their goal. After Luke returned home and handed over the mission, he thought he could retire peacefully, but he was surprised to discover that his superiors had assigned him and Emma another difficult mission. They discovered that Boro was trying to manufacture weapons of mass destruction, and he planned to hijack a train carrying nuclear waste to carry out this plot. Luke and Emma were given new identities, and they boarded the train with 2 other members of the group. At this time, the father and son still did not realize that they were about to face an extremely dangerous challenge. While riding the high-speed train, Luke suddenly discovered a suspicious man sitting in the back row, because he saw that the other person's hands were covered with scars, so he could be an assassin. He was eating a bacon sandwich, but Kazakhs do not eat pork. Although Luke realized that the other person must have a problem, he still decided to observe further. But unexpectedly, after the train had just run for a while, the 2 people sitting next to the window were horrified to discover that a Vinook helicopter was flying over their heads. Emma felt uneasy and turned back to look at the back row, and sure enough, the man eating the sandwich had disappeared. Seeing that, Luke did not hesitate to immediately climb onto the roof of the train through the joint between the 2 cars. At this time, he was horrified to discover that the other man was using the helicopter's pipe to suck nuclear waste from the back car. Although Luke had already defeated him, the helicopter's duct had already started sucking up the waste. Barry calculated and said that Luke and Emma only had 12 minutes to stop it. Hearing this, Emma immediately pulled out her pistol and planned to shoot down the helicopter. But this idea was immediately rejected by her assistant, because if the helicopter carrying nuclear waste was shot down, the vast farmland around would be contaminated. Now, their only option was to let the ship run faster than the helicopter, and the duct would automatically disconnect. But unexpectedly, when Luke and Emma entered the cockpit, they discovered that the train driver was an accomplice of the terrorists. Immediately after, the 2 of them joined forces to take down the train driver, but they accidentally destroyed the automatic acceleration button, so the 2 of them had to ask Barry and his assistant how to solve the problem. Barry informed Emma that there was a cooling box under the floor, and they needed to open it immediately. Without hesitation, Luke and his daughter immediately opened the cooling box under the floor, but the magnetic coolant could not be too much or too little. Luke did not know how many valves to open, so he had to ask the agents. Barry suddenly answered 4, and hearing that, Luke immediately opened all 4 valves. The agents were immediately alarmed when they saw this. It turned out that Barry wasn't talking about the number of water valves. He was referring to the amount of drugs that Luke's wife's lover had taken. Emma was furious when she heard this. She knew right away that Luke had asked Barry to keep an eye on his wife. Emma was furious when she found out, but fortunately, the overloaded coolant had allowed the train to reach its maximum speed. The helicopter saw that the situation was unstable and had to cut off the pipes and fly away. However, because Luke had opened 4 valves, the train was currently running at 400 kilometers per hour. If Luke and Emma didn't slow down quickly, half the town ahead head would be destroyed. After consulting with the assistant team, they realized that if cooling could speed up the train, then heating it would definitely slow it down. Emma quickly thought of the extremely hot nuclear waste pipe on the roof of the train, but Luke thought that the train was currently too fast. If Emma climbed onto the roof, she would be blown away by the wind. After thinking for a while, the two of them came up with a plan. In order to mend Luke and Emma's relationship, the CIA had specially made an electromagnetic vest. Just by pressing the button on the belt, a strong magnetic field would pull the two of them together. But Luke didn't expect that he would bring it with him on the mission. Soon after, Emma climbed onto the roof of the train. Luke activated the magnet under the train to pull his daughter tightly. After a while of struggling, Emma found that she was still a short distance from the pipeline. She called Luke and asked him to play a childhood game. Luke pressed the switch on his belt, and Emma stood up firmly on the roof of the train. Then she jumped up and held onto the pipe that was swaying in the wind. Luke turned on the switch on the vest at the right time. The strong suction pulled Emma tightly to the side of the train. Soon, the two of them brought the pipe into the cockpit. After they adjusted the switch to turn on the pump correctly, the train's magnet began to heat up, and the train's speed gradually decreased. It seemed that Luke and Emma had succeeded. Although they did not catch Boro, they had prevented him from stealing a large amount of nuclear waste. For an agent who was nearly 80 years old like Luke, this was something to be proud of. At the same time, at the terrorist base, although Boro did not get all the nuclear waste, the amount he collected from the helicopter was enough for research. However, if the terrorist group wanted to achieve their goal, they had to get a thesis on the reuse of nuclear waste, because this was banned in Central Asia. The CIA learned of Boro's plan through information from an insider, so they decided to take action first. During the transaction, the terrorists suddenly discovered that Boro found that the seller had a strange wound on his stomach. Boro immediately realized that this was a trap and told his subordinates not to open the box, but the terrorists still did not have time to react. They were shot by the anesthetic needle from the box. Boro knew the situation was dangerous and wanted to run away, but Luke was already lying in ambush. He drove the truck to chase Boro on the vast grassland. Although Boro ran very fast, when the anesthetic started to take effect, he was exhausted and collapsed. At this time at the scene of the transaction, Tali received news that Luke had captured Boro. He immediately took off his shirt and fought with the big guy in front of him, but after a while of struggling, Tali was controlled by his opponent. Before Tali could react, he suddenly discovered that the person who had just shot to save him was his ex-girlfriend Tina. After that, she drove the supercar away from the scene. Tali could only look at Tina in surprise. This capture seemed to be successful, but in fact, everything was part of Boro's plan. During the interrogation, his eyes showed no fear at all. Boro even said that he was willing to provide information about the bases of other terrorists, but he had one small request, which was that he wanted to be placed under control in Bora Bora, and that the CIA was not allowed to touch his assets. Luke and Emma did not care about what Boro said. They treated it as a passing wind, but unexpectedly, the CIA superiors thought that this was a good opportunity. They ignored Emma and Luke's objections. The superiors asked the two to take Boro to a remote warehouse, where Boro used the nuclear suitcase to film a video and posted it on the dark web. Less than 15 minutes later, there were countless purchase requests from terrorists around the world. Seeing this, the head of the CIA's counterterrorism department, Zeifer, did not hesitate and mobilized all the counterterrorism and special forces. Zeifer wanted to attack all the locations sent to him, but at this time they were horrified to discover that all those bases were empty. Only then did everyone realize that Boro's goal from the beginning was the nuclear suitcase. He deliberately got caught in the previous transaction. He used false information about the terrorists to lure the counterterrorism force to another place, and then Boro ordered his subordinates to attack the warehouse that was lacking guards. Everyone could only watch as Boro took back the nuclear suitcase and left the warehouse. Zeifer was furious when she saw this scene. She couldn't believe she had made such a wrong decision. So in a meeting a week later, the CIA changed their target to eliminate Boro. They investigated that he was hiding in a bunker in Serbia. In order to help the agents complete the mission, the CIA contacted neighboring countries in Europe. They used the excuse of transporting coffins. Then they sent agents and a large amount of advanced weapons into Serbia. After the plane carrying the agents landed, the agents immediately changed vehicles and headed to Boro's base. But at this moment, something terrible happened. Local terrorists suddenly attacked the group of agents who had just arrived. Luke realized that they had been bribed by Boro. The agents did not hesitate to immediately use heavy weapons. The two jeeps that rushed to attack were immediately shot and exploded. Luke was about to get out of the the car to see if anyone survived to question them. But at that moment someone shot Tali in the shoulder. Although he was not seriously injured, everyone still decided to take him to the hospital for a checkup. But unexpectedly, the girl nearby accidentally pulled the trigger and blew up the car. Now everyone had no means of transportation. They had to walk to find a target to complete the mission. After they took Tali to a sewer to rest, Luke and Emma went straight to their target factory. The two split up and entered the basement where Boro was hiding. Not long after, Luke discovered that the terrorists were patrolling outside. He approached the base and killed several guards. Suddenly, Luke saw Boro right in front of him. He could have shot and finished Boro off and left immediately, but he stood talking to him for a while. Then Boro's subordinates appeared in time to help him escape. But unexpectedly, when Boro reached the next corner, he encountered Emma. She was also looking for him. After a few missed shots, Emma immediately chased after Boro. When she reached the corner ahead, she suddenly saw Boro throw the nuclear suitcase on the ground. Although Emma knew he was luring her, she was inexperienced and still fell into the trap. The strong Boro rushed out and strangled Emma until she couldn't breathe. On the other side, although Luke was gaining the upper hand in the fight, Boro's subordinate pulled out a grenade. He didn't hesitate to pull the pin and threw it straight at Luke, but he wasn't skilled enough to kill him. Not only that, Luke also threw the grenade back at him. The shockwave from the explosion helped Emma escape the siege, but it also caused the basement to begin to collapse, with piles of bricks and stones blocking the only exit. At this moment, Barry discovered that the temperature in the basement was rising. If the detonator in the nuclear suitcase reached the limit, it would explode, and everyone, including the agents, would die here. Hearing this, the big girl immediately took Tali away from the sewer. Luke also hurriedly called Emma. In a panic, he even ran out and banged on the manhole cover frantically. But Luke was old and weak, so how could he open the manhole cover with his own strength? Luke quickly grabbed a nearby steel pipe and used the principle of leverage to pry the manhole cover open. Fortunately, Emma had also found the ventilation door. In order to escape from here, Emma had to temporarily cooperate with Boro. She asked Boro to lift her up. Emma then quickly clung to Luke and climbed out of the pipe. But this time, Boro had miscalculated. Luke looked at Boro, who was bewildered under the pipe, but he did not save him and turned around and ran away. Boro was in despair and could only sit there and pray in vain. A loud explosion rang out, turning everything into smoke. Luna reported that the explosion spread underground. This battle of wits finally ended, but there was one thing that no one expected, which was that half a year later, Luke's ex-wife got married to her lover. Luke gave her his medal to hold on, but then the car outside suddenly exploded. Emma realized the danger of the situation and immediately pulled out her gun. Inside the church, gunshots rang out continuously. A group of terrorists rushed in from outside. To protect the children, Luke rushed out from the side door to attack them. After a while of fierce gunfire between Luke's group and the terrorists, they finally eliminated all the terrorists. But when everyone thought everything was over, Boro suddenly appeared from the back door and restrained Luke's ex-wife. The scar on his face proves that he survived the nuclear explosion. Since then, Boro has always wanted revenge. Today, he finally has the chance. Boro has lost all humanity. He forced Luke and Emma to point guns at each other. He wants to witness Luke's family massacre each other. Luke told his ex-wife that after all that had happened, she deserved a medal. Hearing this, Luke's ex-wife suddenly understood what he meant. She took the medal out of her pocket and stabbed Boro in the leg to escape. Luke and Emma took the opportunity to continuously shoot him. Now Boro was really dead. Then Tali and Zando also came to help. Although Boro was dead, they brought more shocking news. The identities of all of them had been revealed by Boro. Luke had worked for so many years, so he certainly had many enemies. So the CIA was forced to put everyone in the car and escape. Today's movie ends here. Thank you for watching. Goodbye and see you again.